Chapter 31. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. 31. Blame it on the alcohol, so that he broke up with you just like that. Lillian exclaimed loudly, clearly, she was shocked and forgot all about keeping her voice down. A few other guests around us stared at our table, but I guess I didn't really mind their judging eyes. Yet I still can't wrap my mind around it. I mean, I totally didn't see it coming. At all, I replied before tipping back my shot. I usually hated the taste of alcohol, but right now, I enjoyed how it burned all the way down. I waved my hand gesturing to the overly friendly bartender to get me another drink. Maybe you should slow down on the drinking, Jennifer warned with a look of concern. I'm okay. I brushed off her concern as I eyed my new shot glass. What are you going to do now? Why don't you try to make up with him? Lillian questioned. She had always been a big fan of Kyle, but then again, who wasn't a big fan of Kyle? I honestly don't know. The way he said it, it just felt like he didn't care about me anymore, I said sadly as I recalled Kyle's face and his tone of voice. It gave me the chills. Well, it certainly isn't the end of the world. There are plenty of fishes in the sea. Cheers. Jennifer jumped in as she tried to cheer me up. I knew that it wasn't the end of everything, and she was right. Although, after ending my 2-year relationship with Kyle, I was ready to take a break from relationships for a while. Being single was actually something that I missed. Spending time to focus on myself and my career might be a good thing. I guess being single right now isn't bad. I can focus more on my career. I'm progressing well in my job, and as you know, this job is my dream job, so I said as I smiled back at my friends. Clinking our glasses together, we drowned our drinks for the countless time that night. Enough about my shitty life. When is the big day, Jen? I asked Jennifer. I decided not to tell my friends about my weird encounter with the big boss earlier today. That would bring too much drama into this conversation. The drama around my breakup with Kyle was enough to entertain my girls for weeks to come. Unlike my currently non-existent love life, Jennifer had been proposed to only 2 weeks back. Her fiancé, Will, proposed romantically while they were on vacation on a tropical island. I wasn't there to witness the real deal, but the photos were amazing. The sunset and the rich blue ocean backdrop made the proposal picture perfect. Will and Jennifer had been together since our university days, so it came as no surprise that they would be getting married, finally. We're thinking in around 2 months' time. It's a rush to prepare everything, but I don't want to wait any longer. I'll invite you girls to help me pick out my wedding dress. Of course, you two will be my bridesmaid, Jennifer announced excitedly as she beamed a huge smile at us. Wow! Congratulations! Show me your ring again, I cried out excitedly. Jennifer held up her hand and wriggled her finger to show off her solitaire diamond engagement ring. The rock sparkled in the light beautifully. I felt so proud of Jennifer and so happy for her. Knowing you, your wedding is going to be perfect. Have you decided between indoors or outdoors? Lillian asked. Good question, I added as we both looked at Jennifer. I haven't really decided, but I have to decide soon. I'll keep you girls posted, Jennifer replied as she clapped her hands together. Another cheers for Jennifer and her engagement to Will. I cheered as I held up my shot glass. After many rounds of drinks, I guess I was feeling a little tipsy. Ring ring ring, oh that's mine. Sorry, I have to get this, Lillian said as she stared at her phone screen. Okay, I replied lazily as I ordered another drink. This time a stronger one. I didn't remember much after that. The next thing I knew, I woke up alone in a luxurious hotel room after what seemed to be a wild and very sexual night with a stranger. My temple throbbed from my hangover, and I knew that I had to drink loads of water to get it out of my system. At least today was starting off with a good start. I was not late to work. Now I just need to focus on getting my work done perfectly and my life will somehow return to normal. I tried to be as optimistic as possible while pushing away my thoughts of Kyle. I haven't heard from him or seen him since he broke up with me. Well, that was to be expected. I was partially happy that we haven't moved in with each other yet, although we did discuss it. If we did, breaking up and moving out would have been very complicated for both of us. I greeted a colleague as I entered the elevator on my way up to my floor. This was a good distraction to keep my thoughts from wandering off to Kyle. I prayed silently that I wouldn't run into him at the office. Pretty please. Karina, the department head wants to have a word with you. He dropped by your workstation earlier, but you were in the toilet, Dan informed me as he gestured towards my supervisor's room. I see. Thank you for letting me know, Dan, I replied before offering him a polite smile. Since showing me the ropes on my first day, we had remained close. I wonder what the boss wants so early in the day. Hopefully I didn't make any mistake in the proposal that I had handed in. That would be a full-blown disaster. Hi Lauren, it's me, I called out softly after knocking on the door to her office. My supervisor, Lauren, is a middle-aged woman who was well respected in this company for her many achievements and long tenure with this company. To be continued. Chapter 32. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 32. Wanted by the CEO, come on in, I heard Lauren's calm voice call out to me through the door. I entered the room, closing the door carefully behind me. Lauren immediately gestured for me to take the seat opposite her. I nodded and did as I was beckoned while offering her a professional smile. Hi Karina. I hope I haven't been keeping you too busy these days, Lauren greeted me with a smile. It's always a pleasure working on all the projects that you've assigned to me, I replied honestly. Lauren was a good supervisor and she cared deeply about the development of the people in her team. I see. Well, this might seem a little sudden but as of today, we have decided to transfer you to the CEO's office, Lauren stated with a bright smile. Sorry. Excuse me. I replied in shock, unable to hide my confusion. The CEO's office was a team that comprises of selected individuals from various departments that would work directly with the CEO. Naturally, only the top talent from each department is selected to join the team and they work on strategically important projects for high-profile clients. The team only consists of a handful of people but are able to deliver top performance for the company, and naturally, the leader of such a team is none other than the Devil CEO himself. Now, she's saying that I will be joining that team. You didn't mishear, Karina. I received the official transfer papers this morning and it clearly states that as of today, you are to transfer to the CEO's office where you will be working directly for the CEO. Isn't this great? This is almost like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, Lauren repeated herself more clearly this time while handing me a sheet of paper that contained the official transfer letter. I felt myself feeling dizzy as my eyes started to lose focus from the shock. What role will I have in the new team? I asked the most reasonable question I could come up with. That is up to the CEO. I've heard that the same person can take on different roles when working on different projects. The joy of learning cross-functional work, you know. Lauren stated proudly. I felt my mouth hang open. Me. I'm moving to the CEO's personal team. Wait. I work in design, and I've done some production here and there but I'm not sure that I qualify for such an opportunity. I protested although my voice sounded weak even to my own ears. It was going to be challenging enough for me to join the superstar team, I doubt I even had the skill for it. However, working directly with the Devil CEO brought a long throng of other issues. I never thought I would meet the CEO again, let alone work as his secretary. He just kissed me on the rooftop too. Why can't I get that kiss out of my head? Arg. The CEO has specifically requested for you. Apparently, this is a new role he deemed necessary to make future projects more successful. I honestly don't know why you're so hesitant about this. Other people would be jumping up and down with joy right around now. It's going to be a challenge, but you were always up for challenges, right? You'll learn a lot, and I assure that this position will take you much closer to your dreams, Lauren said as her eyes looked at me earnestly. I could feel that she truly believed that this opportunity was the right one to assist my professional development. A part of me believed that to be true too, but there were other issues that I couldn't exactly tell her about. Can I think this over? I tried my best to negotiate. The atmosphere in the room and the tough look on Lauren's face told me that it was not an option to decline. You can do the thinking after you've had a talk with the CEO. He wants you in his office in precisely 5 minutes, Lauren said with a grin as she looked at her wristwatch. Ha! I have to meet Ace in F.5 minutes. Okay, was all I managed to say in a whisper. Internally, I wasn't feeling okay with any of this at all. How did I end up here? BVEC. I stood in front of a large dark brown wooden door with the silver metallic letters spelling out CEO office. Behind this door is Ace's workroom and the man himself. I gulped as I closed my eyes to control my nerves and to stop my legs from shaking. Recalling our first and last encounter on the rooftop, I could help having a sense of dread. He didn't call me here regarding that event, did he? Well, unfortunately, there's only one way to find out. Knock knock. Hello, sir. This is Karina here, I called out in a soft voice after knocking softly on his door. I was surprised at how normal and professional my voice managed to sound even when I was trembling and so nervous inside. Come in, Ace replied curtly. This is it. My future at this company is hanging by a thread right now. Good morning, sir, I greeted him politely when I entered his office, closing the door softly behind me. His 2 bodyguards moved to station themselves right outside his door. The tension in the atmosphere is driving me crazy, and for some reason Ace has not said a word. What do I do? Do I sit? I stood there in the middle of his room hesitantly as I shuffled from one foot to the other. The fact that he had not said a word since I arrived here made me feel more nervous than ever before. I wondered for the 100th time why he had called me here. There was no logical reason why the CEO of such a large company would have anything to talk to me about. His hazel brown eyes settled on me and I felt even more uncomfortable. His eyes traveled up from my chest to the top of my head before returning to my chest and then descending down until it reached my feet before making its way up again to my face. The atmosphere felt very tense and suddenly I felt very cold. To be continued. Chapter 33. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 33. His personal secretary, take a seat, he commanded, as he gestured with his eyes to the seat located opposite side of his work desk where he was seated. I walked on shaky legs before I hesitantly took the seat as Ace had indicated. Ace was silent again, and I held my breath as I waited patiently for him to say what he had to say. For some reason, I knew that it wasn't good news. I won't beat around the bush, he said as his eyes narrowed slightly at me. He felt like a wolf ready to prance on its prey. That prey, unfortunately, was me. The fact that he paused for effect only made me more curious about what he had to say to me. After a few seconds of silence, he continued. I want you to be my personal secretary, he stated emotionlessly. My mouth hung open as my eyes widened in shock. Did I hear him correctly just now? I heard his words, but I couldn't understand them. Did he just ask me to be his secretary? I didn't know how to respond, and I couldn't wipe the look of pure shock from my face either. He stared at me with an amused look on his face before he chuckled softly. I knew that he found my reaction entertaining, but I did not find his suggestion funny at all. Excuse me. I managed to say in a faint whisper. Ace laughed a little louder before repeating his same words of command. You heard me right. I want you to be my personal secretary, he said sternly, and I did not miss the extra stress he put on the word personal. The way he spoke, and his tone of voice told me that he was serious. The first question that popped into my mind was, why me? Why, I wonder, he said with an amused look on his face as his magnificent brown eyes narrowed at me. It was like he could read my mind, or perhaps everything that I was thinking showed plainly on my face. I had a feeling that he didn't want to answer my unasked question, nor did he have the responsibility to. The Devil's CEO's command was absolute, and I knew that as well as everyone else in the company. When I joined the company, I never dreamt that I would end up working as the Devil's CEO's secretary. I had two problems regarding this proposal of his. Firstly, I wanted to work in advertising. I want to design storyboards that would appeal to the audience. That was my dream, and becoming a secretary worked against leading me to my goal. The second reason was plain and simple. I didn't really want to work every single day with this man. The problem right in front of me was clear, but I didn't have a clear solution to it. How can I possibly turn down his proposal? The fact was that it wasn't really a proposal. It was a command to be obeyed. I don't have any experience working as a secretary, so I'm not sure if I'm the right person for the job. I voiced my excuse softly. Don't worry, I've chosen you. So, you must be perfect for the job, Ace stated confidently, brushing all my excuses to the side. I felt so nervous and intimidated that I couldn't meet his eyes any longer, and my gaze dropped to my hands that were clenched tightly on my own lap. What can I possibly say to make him change his mind? This might put an end to my career at this company, but I had no choice but to say it. What if I said that I don't want to be your secretary? I asked in a very soft voice. I was surprised to see his lips curl up in the little smile. Although I was serious and scared, he seemed truly entertained by my reactions. It doesn't matter what you want, you will become my secretary, he stated without a care in the world. Something snapped inside of me at his words and arrogant attitude, and my words escaped my lips before I could process them through my brain. So, what I want doesn't matter to you at all? I snapped at him. I knew that he was the big boss, but I didn't agree with his method of forcing people to do things against their will. I gasped in shock after I said those words, thinking that it must have offended him. However, those words seemed to have the complete exact opposite effect on him because his smile only widened. Then he started laughing loudly. Well, I was confused as to what he found so funny about what I had just said. He covered his mouth with his hand as he continued to laugh before he put up his other hand as if to excuse his sudden outburst. The way his face transformed when he laughed made him look years younger, although he wasn't that old to begin with. Then tell me what I can do to make you want to be my secretary? Ace asked with an amused glint in his eyes. His questions really caught me off guard. I never considered that he would ask me something like this. Now that I considered his words, I wasn't sure what I wanted or what he could do to make me want to take up this job offer. Honestly, I want to design commercials, and that is why I joined this company. I think I told you as much during my interview. If you still remember. I confessed, honestly. I doubt that he would remember something so trivial as an interview that he attended years ago. So much time had passed, and I didn't think that I was a particularly memorable candidate. I remember what you said, he replied, and I was forced to believe him. Then. I mumbled as relief flooded my body. If he remembers and if he understands, then. However, before I could say any more, his words cut in quite bluntly. To be continued. Chapter 34. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 34. Already moving on. That is exactly why I want you to become my secretary. You'll get to work on more challenging projects, and you'll work alongside me. My team and I handle all the first tiers and the most challenging projects in this company. If you work as my secretary, I'll put you on all those projects so that you can learn. You can flourish while you watch and learn with the best of the best. There are many things that I want to teach you, Karina, he said it all like a promise. Once again, the passion and determination behind his words touched me. I cursed myself silently when my heart skipped a beat when he called me by my name. Just like the many speeches that I've heard him deliver, I was captivated by his words and the earnest emotions behind them. There are many things that he wanted to teach me. It wasn't like I didn't find his suggestion tempting. I knew that it was a rare opportunity to work alongside someone as superior as he was. However, I still had my doubts, and I was very scared of him. But then again, it wasn't like I honestly had a choice. May I have some time to think about this? I asked hopefully. No, you may not. But I'll give you 1 day to mentally prepare for it. Tomorrow you will start working as my secretary, he said in all seriousness. He flashed me a very charming smile, and it was clear that he thought that he had offered me more than enough mercy already. I was frankly dumbstruck, and I didn't know what else to say. Slowly, I stood up from my seat because I knew that our conversation was over. The only thing I could say to him was, "Yes, sir," I whispered. I could feel his eyes on me as I turned to leave. His heated gaze burnt into my back as I walked away and out of his personal office. When I was far enough away from Ace's office, I let out such a long and loud sigh that I was sure that my exhaustion and depression could be felt by everyone in the building. From our entire conversation, I probably agreed with him on one thing only. I needed this entire day and this entire evening and this entire night to mentally prepare myself for my new job of working as his personal secretary. Although I wanted to mentally prepare myself for my new job tomorrow, I found myself tossing and turning in bed, unable to catch a wink of sleep. I was stressed, anxious, and very scared of what would happen tomorrow. I've never worked as someone's secretary before, and honestly, I didn't know what to do. I was scared of losing my job if I failed at this job that he had given me. There were bills that needed to be paid and I wanted to send money back to my mother. That meant that failing wasn't an option for me. I sat up in bed with renewed determination. I'm going to do my best and survive this job no matter what. My mind went back to my initial motivation. The commercial that I saw that changed my life that day. One day I'm going to make a commercial, so touching that I would inspire and change the lives of the viewers who watches it too. With that thought in mind, I laid back down on the bed and closed my eyes and prayed that tomorrow would be a productive day that would lead me closer to achieving my dream. Morning came and I had no idea that something truly shocking would be waiting for me when I arrived at the office. Since I had received an mail last night that I would be required to move from my current department to the CEO's office, I decided to go to work early. I knew that I needed time to clear away my desk and also say farewell to the people in my department. I didn't have that many things on my desk and it didn't take so long to clear it and pack it all up into a small box. With that box in my arm, I began making my way towards the CEO's office. While waiting for the elevator, I heard the sound of people whispering rapidly to each other and quickly realized that they were gossiping. My initial reaction was to ignore them while thinking that they should be doing some productive work rather than gossiping about other people like this. I heard Kyle from the planning department is getting married next weekend, a woman whispered to her colleague. Really? You mean that hot, Kyle, that we all admire, the other woman replied, clearly shocked at what she had just heard. He's getting married. But I thought he didn't even have a girlfriend, another woman whispered back. Kyle only broke up a few days ago. So what does it mean that he's going to get married this weekend? My hands clenched tightly at the box that I was holding in my arms as I listened in to the conversation that the ladies were having. I couldn't believe what I was hearing and I didn't want to believe that it was true. Obviously, these two women didn't know that Kyle and I have been dating for 2 years and that we broke up very recently. I didn't want to hear anything more of what they had to say, but I was still waiting for the elevator to arrive. Are you sure that's true and it's not just some rumor? The woman asked suspiciously. That was exactly what I was wondering. Is this true or was it just some weird and untrue rumor that was spreading around? I'm quite certain. I heard it from my friend that's working in the planning department. Apparently, Kyle invited some of his colleagues and also his boss to his wedding as well. There's no mistake about it, he is definitely getting married this weekend, the woman replied with certainty. To be continued. Chapter 35. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 35. Cheater. My head felt light, and it felt like I was ready to faint right there at that moment. I told myself over and over again that Kyle broke up with me for his own personal reason. That was the lie that I had been telling myself so that I could get through the pain of our breakup. My heart was still far from healed and I couldn't say for certain that I was completely over him. After all, it had only been a few days since we broke up. How was I supposed to erase all memories of the 2 years that we shared together? Even thought, Kyle never got around to telling me the real reason why he decided to end our relationship. I never expected that it would be because he was going to get married to someone else. I mean, people don't break up with their girlfriend to get another girlfriend and then marry her within a week's time, right? That only left one possibility and it was the one that I dreaded the most. All this time that we were together, Kyle had been cheating on me with another woman. Judging from the situation, I wasn't sure if he was cheating on me with her or cheating on her with me. Does it even matter? Both alternatives were just as bad as the other. If the rumors that these wonderful counterproductive ladies were discussing were true, then he had decided to choose her over me. Hence, he dumped me so that he could marry her with a peace of mind. Who cares what Karina would think and feel anyways, right? Thankfully, the elevator arrived so that I could snap out of my ominous thoughts. After I quickly stepped in, the elevator door slid closed. I closed my eyes and let out a huge sigh. I was shocked beyond words and my chest still felt tight. Without knowing the exact reason why, I started praying for the rumors to be false. Deep down, I probably still wanted to believe that Kyle truly loved me and that our relationship was real. I wanted to believe that what we had was real even if it didn't last. Since the CEO's office was located at the top floor of the building, the elevator made many stops on my way up. Once again, the elevator's door opened at a floor. And someone needed to step out, so I took a step away from the door and then I stepped deeper into the elevator so that other people could come in. I wasn't paying attention and didn't realize that this floor was the planning department floor. It was already too late by the time that I realized it. The person standing in front of the elevator, along with his colleagues, was none other than Kyle. If he was shocked to see me, he didn't show it at all. He acted so natural that it made me feel like I didn't exist. Of course, we were not supposed to know each other at work or be close enough to exchange words of greeting. Although, I knew that I couldn't stop the piercing pain that shot through my chest. Without a word of greeting to me, he stepped inside the elevator with his colleagues. "Thanks for inviting us to your wedding this weekend," one of his colleagues spoke up in a cheerful voice. "You're like one of my best friends, so of course you're invited," Kyle replied casually as his friend patted his shoulder in congratulation. "I'm so glad that you and Emily are finally getting hitched. You've been dating for many years now, since university, right?" his other colleague asked. "That's right. I think it's finally time that we make things formal," Kyle replied with a bright smile. "Since university. But I met and started dating Kyle when we started working. This is the worst, he was already with her when he started hitting on me." An unbearable pain shot through my chest, and it started to feel harder to breathe as I realized that I was never his only one right from the start. He always had someone else that he cared about more than me, and in the end, he had chosen that person over me. He was timing me right from the start and I was completely fooled by his perfect guy act. Their conversation went on as if I didn't exist in that small elevator. Each of their passing word made me feel small and insignificant as I tried to hide in the corner of that elevator. I wondered when they would just get out. "Let us treat you to dinner to celebrate your upcoming wedding," his friend suggested. "Yeah, man, we're so happy for you," his other friend chimed in. Finally, the elevator came to a stop at their designated floor and the three men got out. It was as if everything moved in slow motion as I watched Kyle and his friends exit the elevator. Through the entire elevator ride, not once did Kyle glance my way. Then the elevator door slowly closed and I was the only one left in the elevator. I was too shocked that I didn't know how to feel anymore at that point. The elevator arrived at the topmost floor of the building, where the CEO's office was located, and I stepped out. The sound of the elevator door closing behind me filled my ears, but my legs refused to move. I don't know how long I stood there with that random box of my random stuff in my arms right in front of the elevator. In that moment, I just felt so empty inside, like I didn't know why I existed. I just felt so lost. I didn't know why I came here in the first place, and I had no idea what I'd wanted to do next. At that moment, the man that I least wanted to see appeared right in front of me. "How long you planning to stand there?" he asked coldly. To be continued. Chapter 36. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 36. The devil's comfort. I heard him, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. Before I knew it, my lips were quivering uncontrollably, and then warm, wet tears spilled over my eyes and rolled down both my cheeks. I have never felt like this before, and I didn't even realize that I had started crying until the tears streamed down my face. At first, I thought I was simply sad and upset. However, those emotions didn't adequately explain what I was feeling. The heart-burning sensation inside my chest resembled more of anger, and the tight knot in my stomach felt like a grudge that would never fade. I felt like I was ready to explode from the inside out. I felt Ace's eyes on me as he looked at me curiously. I watched as he cocked his head slightly to one side in wonder. I must have looked like such a mess. It was my first day working for him, and here I am, standing right in front of him in tears. Thankfully, he didn't ask me what was wrong, because I didn't know what I would have told him if he did. Slowly, he approached me until he stood directly in front of me. My unfocused eyes watched through my own tears as his hand slowly approached my face. Then I felt the warm heat of the pad of his thumb as he slowly wiped away the tears from my left cheek and then my right. "Stop crying and come with me," he said flatly. I looked up at his face, blurred through my tears, as I wondered how the touch of someone so cold could feel so warm and gentle like this. Although I knew that he had ordered me to follow him, my feet felt like they had grown roots and were glued to the spot. Ace's hand left my face before he sighed once again. Then I felt the warmth of his hand as he took my hand into his and held it firmly. Before I could protest or say anything, he had turned around and began walking away while pulling me along with him. The movement snapped me out of my misery a little, and I was reminded once again that I was crying in front of the CEO like a dumb fool who couldn't control herself and her emotions, and perhaps, at that moment, that was exactly what I was. I wiped the tears from my eyes with the back of my hand before my eyes fell to where our hands were connected, while my mind wondered what kind of man Ace Hill was really like. A part of me still felt that I shouldn't get any closer to him, but another part of me couldn't stop my own curiosity from running wild. "Fly too close to the sun and you'll get burnt, Karina." I was conscious of Ace's hand holding mine as I followed obediently behind him. He half-led and half-dragged me along a very long hallway that I knew led to his personal office. Luck was on my side because we didn't run into anyone on the way there. This was Ace's private floor, so it wasn't surprising that not a lot of people passed by here. No one should be here except for people working in his team and those that had meetings with him. My eyes traveled along the hallway decorated in the modern luxury style before my eyes quickly went to the broad back of the man walking right in front of me. Ace opened the door to his office and pulled me in after him without saying a word. "Do you need to cry some more?" he asked emotionlessly. No, that's okay," I replied hesitantly, my voice coming out so small and squeaky. Surprisingly, Ace didn't ask me why I was crying. If he was someone else, I would probably have thought that he was just being considerate by not prying into my personal life. However, because he had witnessed that unsightly scene of Kyle dumping me on the building's rooftop, he probably had a very good guess of why I was so upset. It wasn't like he knew all of it. I doubted that he knew about Kyle too. Timing me and the fact that he was about to marry another girl very soon. "Take a seat," Ace said as he gestured for me to take a seat on the dark gray leather sofa that was in his office. Ace's office was huge now that I had time to pay attention to it. It was clearly designed so that he could host business meetings in various forms. There was the standard large working desk that made him look like a royal king in command when he sat on his chair. Then there was the sofa set that I was currently sitting on that could seat around 10 people with a coffee table in the middle. To the other end of the room was a meeting room separated by a glass partition. I was certain that there were more rooms, but that was all that I could see from where I was seated. Ace plopped down onto the sofa opposite me and he seemed very relaxed and at home while I started to feel nervous in his presence. To my utmost surprise, I had completely stopped crying. Although I was extremely upset until just now, my tears have all but dried up. As I became more aware of the fact that I was alone with Ace in his office and how unusual this setting was, the feeling of nervousness quickly replaced the sorrow that I felt. I'm not going to ask if you're okay or not because you're obviously not okay, but I can't have my personal secretary crying on her first day of work either. Ace said with a lopsided grin as his hazel eyes fell on my face. Right, I'm supposed to be working and this is working hours. It was entirely my fault for failing to control my emotions like this. For the first time, I personally understood from first-hand experience why the company put the "no dating between employee" rule in place. It was to avoid shitty messes like these that would harm productivity. To be continued. Chapter 37. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 37. A second chance. I'm very sorry about this. This will never happen again, that I promise. I apologized desperately. Not only did I break the rule of dating another colleague, but the CEO caught me and now I was an emotional mess right in front of him. How did the career that I tried so hard to build lead me here? Ace looked at me with passive eyes as if my apology did not reach him at all. His hazel brown eyes were cold, and he looked unimpressed and unmoved by my apology. He probably didn't believe a single word that I had just said, and I couldn't find it in me to blame him either. I never thought that I would have to ever ask something like this, but it was better to get this over and done with directly. Sorry, but am I going to be fired? I asked directly while I dreaded his answer. Unlike my apology from earlier, my question got his attention immediately and Ace's eyes widened at me. He was probably shocked at the directness of my question. His brown eyes stared at me, and it took a lot of courage from my courage bank to keep myself from averting my gaze. It was probably just a few seconds that his eyes held mine, but it felt like a long year had passed by the time that Ace's lips curved into a little smile that quickly widened before he began chuckling. Apparently, Ace found something about this situation very funny while I couldn't even begin to imagine what it could be. I'm not sure what you find so funny. I mumbled as felt heat rush to my cheek. You and your thoughts are funny, Ace said as he tried desperately to hold in his laughter. I had to admire his efforts, but I had to say that he wasn't very successful about it. After a moment of trying to hold it in, Ace gave up completely and he began laughing loudly as a result. I stared at him with mixed emotions as he continued to laugh. Honestly, I haven't laughed like that in a very long time. Ace said after he somehow managed to return to his calm self again. Aha! I mumbled as I waited for him to explain himself. I was still amazed by how much his face seemed to change when he laughed. It never failed to intrigue and captivate me every time that the cold emotionless mask that he had on would transform into another expression. I've been offering you a new role as my personal secretary and here you are asking if I'm going to fire you. How does that even line up, he said as he looked pointedly at me. Now that he put it that way, I guess it really didn't make any sense. Wait, then that means that he still wants me to work here, right? Are you sure? I mean, what about the rule against workplace relationships? I asked, still shocked at where this was going. He's supposed to be the devil CEO, so why is he offering me a chance like this? Oh, that rule. Well, quite honestly, I never gave two fucks about that. That's just a rule that my father made up which I never really understood in the first place. When I turned up here people were so strung up on it that I thought that it would be amusing to keep this stupid traditional rule in place, Ace said as if was all just a big joke to him. Did he just say, fuck, just now? And with such a straight face. Is this how he normally is? The language aside, he just told me that he didn't care at all about that rule, right? But, I murmured as another wave of shock washed over me. For a moment, I had no idea who or what I was dealing with anymore. No matter what, I couldn't seem to wrap my head around him. Ace continued staring at my face and it made me feel more anxious under his gaze. Why did he have to be so attractive? The long lashes framing his hazel brown eyes as he stared at me made my heart skip a few beats. I should wrap up this conversation so that I can get my ass out of here. Don't worry about breaking that rule so much. No one knows about it apart from you and him, right? Ace asked casually. Well, actually, Ace technically knew about it too, but perhaps it wasn't a wise move to remind him of that fact right now. Oh, I guess I do know about it too. Having been there when it ended. Ace said with a merciless chuckle. I winced visibly at his words. The funny thing was I wasn't sure if I winced because he had stepped on my old wound or if I was getting slightly pissed off at this overly handsome and sexy man sitting right opposite me. Right. I muttered, not knowing what else to say. Don't worry too much about it. By the way, I have a secret to tell you. I promise that it'll make you feel better about this whole shitty situation that you're in, Ace drawled seductively as he leaned towards me from across the table. My entire instinct told me that I shouldn't hear what he was about to tell me, however, the way that he looked at me made it hard for me to look away. Did he have this effect on everyone or was it just me? Don't scoot over, Ace said as he got up from his seat and approached where I was sitting on the sofa. Did he just tell me not to scoot over? Like stay where I am now even when he's so close? While my body froze in place, Ace sat down next to me on the leather sofa. He was so close that our thighs were basically touching. I tried my best to angle my body away so that my shoulder wouldn't touch him, but that only resulted in Ace placing an arm around my shoulder. I gasped as he pulled me closer against his body. If you move too far away, how am I supposed to whisper my top secret into your little ear? Ace asked teasingly. To be continued. Chapter 38. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 38. Be his girlfriend. No, he's too close. His arm around my shoulder tightened around me as he pulled my body against his. My eyes widened in shock when I felt the warmth of his breath against my cheek. I didn't even dare turn my face around to face him, knowing full well how close he was to me right now. You see that I've broken that golden rule before too, he whispered directly into my ear. His lips were so close to my ear that I could almost feel them brushing against my earlobe. My body froze, I was completely stunned at his words. Ace broke that rule too. I scooted away from him, and his arm willingly let me go. After putting enough space between us on the sofa, I turned to face him with my eyes still widened in shock. The way he said those words did not at all imply that he was engaged or is currently engaged in a proper relationship with simply one employee. Just how many girls has he been fooling around with in this company since he took over as CEO? Or even before that? I thought letting you know my little dirty secret would make you feel better. They say that you'll feel better if you know that you're not the only one going through something, like you feel like you can share the suffering with someone else. Did I get that wrong? Ace said, clearly intrigued. I was completely speechless as I stared at Ace's slightly curious face. Did he honestly think that telling me that would make me feel better about the fact that I broke the rule? Because he broke it too. What kind of logic was that? No, please, I said as I shook my head at him. I didn't want him to tell me anymore. I absolutely did not want any more details, and I definitely did not need to know who that lucky or unlucky girl or girls was that he was involved with. You look even more panicked and upset than before. I guess what they say isn't true then. Ace said with a, oh that's too bad, look on his face. After recovering from my shock, my thoughts were on the future of my career. Losing my job wasn't an option that was on my table. I thought of my mother and how devastated she would be if she learnt that I was fired, worse, if she learnt about the true reason behind it. Then there was that sensitive issue of money and providing for my family. I gulped. The solution to this whole problem was clear and I just needed to stomach it and face it straight on. I need to become this man's personal secretary. So, what should I do with that Kyle guy? Ace asked as he looked at me with a devilish grin on his face. Oh no. Please don't fire him. I cried out so loudly that I was shocked by my own actions. Why not? Ace said with an amused grin on his face. Kyle. He's high dedicated to his job. He works hard and his colleagues love him. He's very good at what he does. Honestly. I pleaded desperately. I didn't realize it until those words had escaped my lips in my desperate attempt to persuade Ace from firing Kyle from his job. I gasped before I bit on my lower lip when I realized that I had automatically defended Kyle even after all the cruel things that he did to me. I have to say that you're one peculiar girl. Ace said, and I had to agree that he was at least partly right. That's. I opened my mouth to try to explain but then closed it again when I realized that I didn't have much to say for myself. So, what do you want to do about this guy? Ace asked curiously. What I wanted to do? Well, honestly. I'm going to ask him to tell me the truth to my face and then I'm going to give him a piece of my mind. I stated heatedly as my emotions started taking over again. And then? Ace urged with interest. That I don't know. It's over between us anyways. He broke up with me, you know that. You were there. And he's getting married this weekend, I said before pursing my lips into a thin line. Somehow, I found myself telling Ace everything so easily as if he was my trusted confidant. Voicing it out loud didn't hurt me as much as I thought that it would. In fact, it made me feel slightly better. Do you still love him? Ace asked as his eyes stared deeply into mine. He's so handsome and his eyes feel like they're hiding so many mysteries. I don't know. I admitted truthfully. I would be lying if I said that I had completely gotten over Kyle, but it wasn't like I felt the same before I learnt that he had been lying to me all along either. Don't waste another tear on a bastard like him, Karina, Ace said, and his tone was serious. I know that but. I replied softly. But it wasn't that easy to do, otherwise, would have just forgotten about him and all the time that we shared already. Moving on is something that I had to do and fast. I have the perfect proposal for you, Ace said as his face lit up like a great idea had suddenly entered his head. And what would that be? I asked although I tried to pretend that I wasn't that curious. Something told me that he was up to no good and so was his idea. Be my girlfriend, Ace said as his hands grabbed my shoulder and turned my upper body to face him directly. His hands held my shoulders very firmly and I found myself staring deeply into his eyes as my mouth hung open. Did I hear him right just now? He just asked me to be his personal secretary and now he's asking me to be his girlfriend. What is wrong with this man? Was all that I managed to say. Why do you look so shocked? Ace asked before his lips curled up into a very charming smile that showed me his perfect and white teeth. He's got a very captivating smile for sure, and his white teeth contrasted so well with his tan skin. To be continued. Chapter 39. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 39. The truth about that night. Well, you just asked me to be your girlfriend. I replied, still completely confused. I bet my life that he isn't being serious with any of this. He's just playing me and I'm letting him play me. Like a fool once again. Shouldn't you be jumping up and down with joy? Ace asked as if he truly expected me to do exactly that. No, I replied as I glared back at him. You're a funny girl, he comments while I already lost count how many times he's told me that today. What? I said, still in disbelief. Were you late to work yesterday morning? He asked sternly. I cocked my head to the side in wonder. Why is he asking me that? Is he trying to get me into trouble? Doesn't seem likely. No, I was on time. I replied while wondering why he was asking me this now. I see. So, you managed to make it on time. I had my doubts, seeing that you were sleeping very soundly. Ace said as he seemed to recall something from his memories. Wait. He saw me sleeping. What does that mean? How is that even possible? Excuse me. I said in pure confusion. What did he say just now? I must have misheard or misunderstood. Ace cocked his head to the side in wonder as if he was mocking me. Then his hazel eyes narrowed at me dangerously. It was like what I said made him slightly angry, but I couldn't understand why. Do you really don't remember or are you pretending not to? He asked with a hint of annoyance as his eyes captured mine and held it. I found myself staring deeply into his eyes as if captivated by what I saw in them. He's so handsome and very attractive. And I have no idea what you could be referring to. I replied honestly. I see. If that's the case then, I have no choice but to remind you. Ace said in a seductive drawl. Remind me. Of what? Exactly. I mumbled softly as I started to get a bad feeling about all this. Of what happened that night. Ace whispered mysteriously. That night. I murmured blankly. I was more confused than before, and while I was trying to dig up memories of what he could possibly be talking about, Ace had gotten close to me again on the sofa. I could feel his eyes on my face as if he was wishing that I would remember. Do you remember? Ace asked again and his voice was low and so seductive. My eyes flew to my hand when I felt the heat of his hand taking mine into his. I watched as if under some spell as he slowly lifted my hand to his lips. My body froze in place as my breath caught in my throat. Instead of kissing my hand, the wet warmth of his mouth engulfed my ring finger before he started sucking softly on it teasingly. Sir. I cried out, but my voice sounded like a sweet purr instead. Call me Ace when we're alone. Ace demanded before my finger disappeared into his warm and wet mouth again. Shocked, at both what he was doing and how I was reacting to him, I tried to pull my hand away, but it was no use. His grip around my hand only tightened as he began licking my fingertip with the tip of his wet tongue. His mouth felt so warm and the sensations of his tongue stroking my fingertips felt strangely pleasurable. Do you remember what happened that night between us? He asked as his hazel eyes stared at from face. Between us. I said as my mind tried to deny the only possibility that I could come up with. It can't be. Can it? I slept with a man that I didn't know, and I didn't remember. Then I woke up the hotel room, my body a mess. Yes, allow me to fill you in about what really happened that night. I'll make you remember so that you'll never forget it ever again. Ace whispered seductively. With one final flick of his tongue along the length of my finger, Ace removed my finger from his mouth. Before I could react, he yanked on my hand hard, pulling my entire body towards him. It all happened so fast, and before I could understand what was truly going on, his warm lips were against mine. Ace crushed his lips against mine in a very passionate and demanding kiss. My eyes widened in shock as he continued to kiss me. I made protesting sounds against his kiss that sounded more than moans even to my own ears. Then I felt it, the wet and warm sensation of the tip of his tongue probing my lips open. His smell of his perfume overwhelmed my senses as he wrapped his arms around my body and held me against his hard and large frame. Slowly, my eyes drifted close as my lips parted slightly for him. Ace's tongue plunged into the depth of my mouth with hesitation. I moaned as a sense of bliss filled my mind. Ace's tongue found mine and started teasing it expertly. His kiss felt so good, and soon, I was responding to his kiss. What is wrong with me? Even though, I knew that this was so wrong, I just couldn't stop myself. His kiss tasted and felt familiar, and my body responded quickly to him like it knew what it was supposed to do. Ace grinded his tongue against mine as he savored my taste. I felt my entire body going weak in his arms before I began moaning again into our wet and hot kiss. He sucked on my lips before changing the angle of our kiss to kiss me even deeper than before. My body started to feel hot as his hand began stroking the curve of my back and waist. That night, you were so drunk that I had to take you to a hotel room. You were alone and I had no idea where you lived. Ace said after he broke our kiss. My mind was in a daze from the pleasure of the kisses that we had just shared. I wasn't even sure what he was talking about. Ace shot me a slightly disapproving look like a parent scolding their naughty child. To be continued. Chapter 40. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 40. Reliving a steamy memory. When we entered the room, you wouldn't let go of me. You begged me to stay, and when you thought that I wouldn't, you started kissing me. Ace said before he smirked at me. I did that. Really? When I kissed you back, you melted in my arms and begged me to touch you. Ace continued as his eyes looked at me with intense desire. Was that the way he looked at me that night as well? As if to illustrate what happened that night, his hand stroked its way from my waist up to my chest. I held my breath in anticipation until his large manly hands cupped my breasts firmly and began groping it. When I massaged your breasts, you cried out as you begged for me to touch you more. Ace continued with his story of that night. Ah! I moaned loudly when his hand began massaging my breasts through my clothes. My nipples felt tight, and I knew that they must be as hard as rocks from his caresses. He's driving me crazy already, and all he's doing is grope me on top of my clothes. I couldn't even begin to imagine the pleasure from his touch if he were to touch my breasts and my nipples directly. Yes, just like that. Ace said with satisfaction as he looked down at my face. Did I really do everything like he said? I couldn't remember anything, but his touch truly turned me on, and the more he touched me, the louder that I moaned, the more I started to believe in his words about that night. His fingers expertly unbuttoned the small buttons of my shirt before his hand slipped inside. I moaned his name when his hand reached behind me to unhook my bra. The cups fell away and my breasts spilled out into his awaiting hands. The heat from his hand seeped into my cool skin as his large hand cupped my breasts directly. I whimpered weakly as my body started writhing from the seductive pleasure of his touch. Ace massaged my breasts a little rougher than before, and I moaned like I was going mad from lust. I closed my eyes and bit on my lower lip before another lewd moan escaped from me. His fingers captured my swollen nipples and began tugging on them before his lips captured mine in a wet and deep kiss. His tongue probed my mouth invitingly, and I parted my lips without hesitation to grant him access. My tongue danced wildly with his as I moaned passionately into our wet kiss. Ace's fingertips rolled my nipples between them before squeezing on the sensitive peaks. He was so good at what he was doing, and I was practically melting at his touch. My body craved for more pleasure, and I began thrusting my breasts against his hands as if begging for him to touch me more. By the time that Ace broke our fervent kiss, my mind was intoxicated by my need and desire for him. I have never felt like this before. The pleasure that he made me feel was so intense that I felt like I was going to cry from it. Ace looked down at my erotic face as he watched my every reaction to his lewd touches. I panted and moaned his name, and he smiled adoringly down at me as he enjoyed my reactions. I touched you like this, and you cried out from the pleasure. Your breasts and nipples truly are sensitive, Ace said as his fingers pinched my nipples roughly and repeatedly. Ah! 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 Ace! I cried out exactly as he had predicted as his fingers worked their magic on my erect nipples. Ace pulled my body back against his before burying his face in the side of my neck. He inhaled deeply as if taking in my scent before he sighed in bliss. His lips started kissing the sensitive skin on the side of my neck softly before he started nibbling on it. All the while his hand busily kneaded my breasts, making me cry out from the mix of slight pain and immense pleasure. I looked down to see his large hand squeezing my soft womanly flesh as my breasts changed shape in his hands. One of his hands slid down from my breasts along the plane of my stomach before proceeded down even further to my waist. I sucked in a breath and held it in anticipation of where his hand was headed. His hand moved too slow for my preference, but soon I felt his hand on my thigh. You begged for me to touch you. Everywhere. You were so desperate that you started undressing yourself. You pulled your skirt up like this. Ace said with a hint of amusement in his voice. His hand stroked my thigh for a moment longer before he started pulling up my skirt. Slowly, inch by inch, he revealed my thighs until my entire lower body was exposed. He pulled my skirt up all the way and pulled it around my waist. I blushed in embarrassment when I felt his eyes on my pussy that was now covered only in thin light pink lacy underwear. His large hand cupped my pussy through my panties and my hips bucked, thrusting my pussy upwards into his hand. I cried out when his fingers pressed up against my opening through the thin fabric of my panties. It's completely soaked through, just like that night. Ace said teasingly into my ear as his fingers started pushing and stroking my wet open through my panties. Ah, Ace, I moaned and called out his name as my head thrashed from side to side against his hard and muscular chest. I knew that he wasn't lying to me right now. My core throbbed with desire and my pussy clenched wildly in anticipation of his direct touch. The pleasurable ache in my lower abdomen that had been developing for a while now, told me that my pussy was already wet. The more he stroked me there, the wetter I got. When his skillful fingers found the and twirled the sensitive little seed in between my legs, I cried out at the same time that hot wetness gushed out of my pussy hole. To be continued.